Hey guys, it's Rich, and welcome to another Stitch and Witch vlog. Again, no stitching, but lots of witching, lots of contemplation today. Today I am actually doing a video on an article by Angelo from the Pagan Perspective. He recently became a writer for Pathos. And if you hear noises in the background, just ignore those, because those are the cats just not, respecting that, something big is happening here, such as recording. Rude. So, Angelo is a writer for Pathos now, and if you don't know about Angelo, you should definitely watch his channel, especially if you're into tarot. He has a lot of tarot videos. Some of his tarot reviews are the ones that sparked the ideas for me to do my tarot reviews or to buy the tarot decks that I have bought. So thank him for the madness of the tarot decks coming in, which I just bought a new one yesterday, and it should be in tomorrow. And you guys will see that probably later on in the coming months, because I have a lot of Tarot Talk Tuesday videos coming your way, and I still have to do the Futhark Friday video, so this is going to be an interesting one. Hopefully it will actually upload by the end of Thursday so I can make my Thursday schedule. Schedules, important things. And also stay tuned to the end of the video where you will see a special guest on camera. I think this is maybe the first time she's ever actually been on camera in one of my videos, so fun. Anyway, in addition to Angelo also being an author for Pathos, which is an article that I'm going to be debating, he is also the author of Tarot Unlocking the Arcana, which I will also be doing a book review on this book, because I think it is a great resource that you guys can benefit from. So I will be doing a different video on that book in particular. I think it's August 29th, if I have my schedule, if I keep to my schedule. Let's hope I keep to my schedule. Anyway, so what are we talking about today? We are talking about the Pathos article that he wrote recently called The Hearth of Hellenism. We don't have relationships with gods, or do we? Now, intriguing title, and I'm not going to read the entire article to you guys. You can find that in the nether regions down below. So I am going to preface this entire video by saying sometimes my words can be a little harsh. I've already talked to Angelo or messaged him on Facebook, pretty much saying, hey, I'm going to do this video, and just so you know, I'm not attacking you. I'm debating an idea for debating sake, for the debate's sake alone. A philosophical discussion between people who rattle things around in their brain and then spew them out onto a video format. Of course, I encourage everybody to go ahead and go check that, check the link out in the bottom bar, and read the article for yourself and come up with your own conclusion, because he does make an argument that is relatively sound, but for me it doesn't work. Personally, that's where I'm going with it. So I'm just gonna preface this by saying, love you, Angelo. I gained so much from your book, your videos. You in particular, we've talked via Facebook and all that, and I get so much from our friendship that I don't want it to crumble because of one scathing review, if you will. This is purely a debate. So without further ado, like I said, I'm not going to read the entire article to you guys. I'm going to go through and get little snippets, and of course read the article in its entirety, so you can hold me to my my honesty and my review for review's sake. So anyway, Angelo starts out, think of him as Socrates, but cuter. I have seen photos of Socrates. The most I know about the guy is that he wasn't as good looking as Angelo, and yeah, he was a philosopher, so that's about the extent of Socrates that I know. Sorry. But yes, okay, I can definitely make that leap in logic that you're like Socrates, but cuter. Okay. No hemlock will be involved in this video, so we're good there. Okay, so then we get into the meat of it. After the introduction, good introduction. I do enjoy a good introduction. It draws you in. He talks about in the second paragraph, and I'm sorry I'm not looking at you, I'm looking at the article that I printed out. Maybe if I put it like this, I can actually read and do this video at the same time, but I can't read that far. So he talks about it being a commonplace for us to say that we have a relationship with gods, with goddesses, with deity, and I'm going to use God or deity or goddess and deity interchangeably. God, goddess, deity. Put your label on it. We're going to run with whatever comes out of my mouth because, you know what, I'm only going to try this in one full take. He also says that some describe how a certain god called them, or how they work with the gods in magical practice, whatever it may be, and it's often viewed as a personal relationship. Most of us can probably identify with this. We work with our deities in magical workings. We work with them in just inner soul searching, inner shadow work, inner exploration, if you will. So I can definitely agree with that. So now we go for the argument's sake, where he says, let's challenge a concept. I am always up for challenging this concept. And like I told him, I said, Angelo, this has been like rattling around my brain for like the last, I think he brought the discussion to a group of us, about 2 weeks ago, maybe a week or so ago, and I've been thinking about it like constantly since then. So yeah, I have been putting a lot of thought into this. So I am totally up for this thought experiment. Okay, in the fourth paragraph, I believe I'm on the fourth paragraph here. Okay, he starts going into the meat of his argument, why he thinks that people have in the pagan community have this viewpoint, and it's mainly because of carryover from the Christianity that many of us have had in the past, which I can kind of agree with that, but I can also disagree with that, and I will get to that in a minute. He writes, various Christians are known for claiming to have a personal relationship with Jesus/God because their God is a personal God. I agree. In their theological view, God is the creator of everything and viewed as a heavenly parental figure. Thus, like a parent wants to have a relationship with his child, God desires to have a relationship with us, God's children. Okay. After that sentence, there is a hyperlink, and I will tell you that it was a little hard to find the hyperlink on the actual article, but whenever I printed it out, it did have the entire hyperlink. That's how I found that there was a hyperlink there. Otherwise, I would have just passed over it. So if you are viewing this on the computer or on your handheld device, your cellular phone, you may not notice that hyperlink, but go ahead and click that. It starts with the word some, and click on that, and it'll take you to another article. And my major gripe with that article is because the guy in that article, it's from chadbird.com. Chadbird, I guess, that person's blog, discusses a relationship being with, our relationship is not with God in the sense of Christianity. Our relationship is not with God. It is with community and God. So his whole basis of that, I really have a hard time swallowing that our relationship with God is only within a community, within a communal type of relationship with God. I think that we can have both a personal, in a Christian aspect, both a personal and a communal relationship with God, because, you're not always going to be within a group, and even Christ went away to have that communal time with God. There's Christ, there's Job, the list goes on and on about people having a one-on-one relationship in Christianity with God by themselves, not communally. You even have Moses going back, you have Abraham, you have all these these prophets, these big figureheads in Christianity that have a relationship with God personally. So, chadbird.com, I don't think that your relationship with God is only in a communal sense. I think it is also on a personal level from a Christian standpoint. So, my question is, why can't it be both? But we're not really reviewing Chad Bird's article, but I do encourage you, again, to check it out because learning equals fun. And, you know, maybe you guys will be able to come up with an argument more than just this little snippet, and maybe, you know, do a video on it or something. And if you do, please comment down below. If you leave a hyperlink, I do go through my spam and everything, which usually catches all the hyperlinks. So if you leave a hyperlink, that's totally fine. If it's a legitimate hyperlink, I will go ahead and put it in the comments as, you know, verified okay. So not only me, but other people can also check out a video if you choose to do one on that. He goes on to say some challenge the concept of a personal relationship with Jesus, so that's nice to see that I'm not the only one questioning the idea of a personal relationship with divinity. No, you're not alone. But I think Chad Bird's argument is a little bit different than yours. I think Chad Bird, and I could totally be wrong, has an argument only communally can we have a relationship with God, versus you're saying that we don't have a relationship with God at all, or that we relate to God, but God does not really reciprocate. In Chad Bird's article, he stipulates that, you know, God reciprocates, but only in a communal sense. So, you know, I did enjoy that article, kind of. It kind of ticked me off a little bit because I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, your basis is, yeah, kind of biblical, but still very wrong. Or skewed. I don't want to say wrong. Wrong's not the right word. I would say skewed from what I've been taught and what I've learned and what I've observed while in Christianity. It's not exactly the same as I know it. So I don't want to say wrong because opinions aren't wrong. They're just opinions, which this is an opinion piece. So from my perspective, it's an opinion piece. And yes, I got to put my legs up because we're getting relaxed here. He goes on to say, and he's questioning here about, are we bringing with us the idea of a personal relationship from our backgrounds of Christianity that many of us come from? Is it a subconscious or a conscious attempt to be equal with our monotheistic neighbors? When Christians say that they have a personal relationship with Jesus, a pagan can respond by saying they have a personal relationship with their own gods. It levels a playing field where pagans can also experience a personal relationship with the divine. And here's my side of the debate, is I do think that a healthy portion of the pagan community comes from a background of Christianity. And for a lot of them, I actually see a kind of running away or a shunning from Christianity, or where Christianity is shunned from their life, where they don't like the atmosphere of the Christian church, whether it's a lifestyle that they live, such as sexual partners, or whether it is just a theological difference or a philosophical difference. The number of reasons vary from person to person, and I think whenever a lot of them, if they have a problem with Christianity, try to get as far away from it as possible. So in this case, I don't really see this as a reason that pagans would want to be equal with Christians. Pagans kind of just want to do their own thing. So I don't think that really levels the playing field. I think it's more of a type of thing where they find a system that works with them, and it's not Christianity, so they don't want to really be like Christians. They just want to do what they want to do in the way that they're supposed to do it, or in the way that they feel is right as a pagan. I don't think that it's necessarily wanting to be like Christians. And like I said, in some cases, it is where they are either pushed out of the church, or they run from the church because they are not welcome there because of a myriad of reasons. So I don't think that pagans would really want to be equal with Christians in that sense, because of the negative emotions that it might bring up from the past. So in that argument, I would have to disagree with that based on that alone. And then he goes on into the next paragraph about talking about how we have seen in mythology, and we can't really take mythology like Christians take the Bible. We have to take it as myth and not necessarily actual literal truth. We can't take it in an exoteric fashion. We have to take it as an esoteric fashion, because it is myth. It is not historical fact. So he says that with mythology, we have to take it that way. So, and I can tend to agree. In fact, even within the Bible, I read some of it mainly as myth now, knowing some of the background information into some of the books that I'm studying in my personal studies, looking into the backgrounds of books like Genesis and even the Gospels, and who wrote them, when were they written, and what jives and doesn't jive within historical context. So I'm even reading biblical texts more in more of an esoteric manner than I am as an exoteric manner, meaning in a literal fashion. And then he goes on to say, Plato rejects many myths as false. For example, anytime Zeus turned into an animal to have its way with a human, Plato says they are not true. In the Republic, Plato defines the gods are perfect beings with perfect form. Now, pay attention to that, because we'll come to that later. The gods have full control of their bodies and do not do anything unwillingly. They do not change form into any lower or inferior form, because a being would not worsen itself on purpose. For example, Zeus would not take on a lower form, worsening his form, such as an animal. To which I want to respond, for one, I have not read Plato's writings, so he could mention this in there, what I'm about to ask. He may answer those questions in there. But my questions then are, who is the true Zeus? And I don't mean that to sound flippant or ignorant. If you take away the mythologies of these deities, what do we have? What is left as a takeaway from who they are? Or, are they physical beings in that instance, or are they just energetic beings? Do they even exist in that instance if you take away the mythologies attached to them? So that's my question, is if you take these aspects of deity away from the deity and say, oh, these are false, they're just myths, what do we have left? What is the essence of that deity then? So, like I said, Plato may actually have the answers in his writings, but I don't know of them. And you may say that I'm ignorant, and you'd be totally correct. I am not well informed on Plato's writings at all. So, if somebody can help a Christo-Pagan out, I'd be much obliged. Now, in the next paragraph, he defines what he means by relationship. Instead of relationships, what we have are relations to or with the gods. There is a difference between the former social, interpersonal, while the latter is reflecting interactions not having to be between people. For Plato, there are proper relations between gods and mankind. And then he gives an example, which I'm not going to make myself sound like a fool by trying to pronounce names here, but you can go ahead and read that by clicking on the link in the nether regions. Then he goes on to say, service is found in the relationship between an individual who needs something and another person who provides the service in fulfillment of that need. So I'm gonna just table that for a second. But then he goes on to say, but gods are perfect and have no needs, so there is no service to provide them. So my question is, again, why do we leave offerings for them? There is a give and a take, not in the instance of the cosmic slot machine, for instance. It's more out of honoring them or praising them in some way, giving thanks in some way. Offerings are seen in multiple cultures. So my question is, if the deities are in perfect form and don't require anything, then why are we giving them offerings? What does that give them that they can't get themselves? And if they don't require it, then why do we give offerings at all? Rather than just saying, in the Christian sense, hey, God, can you help me out? And it happens, like the cosmic slot machine that people use him for. That for me is a big question. Why do we give offerings if they don't need them, if they don't require it? And what makes them help us, or what guides them to help us if they have no personal stake in it? So why would they be willing to help us at all? I mean, these are honest questions that I have, and ones that have been rattling around in my brain and might now end up being imparted to you guys to rattle around in your brains for the next couple weeks. So then he goes on to ask, so how do we serve gods, or the gods? And his viewpoint is, we help to fulfill undertakings which benefit humankind. Our relation with the gods is how we work with them to bring greater peace into the world and into our lives. We are here to promote human virtue amongst our fellow man, which I tend to agree. I really do. I think that's a beautiful way of serving deity. But I'm going to move on from that. I have nothing to say about that is contrary to those words there. I think benefiting humankind is a wonderful way to serve deity and serve our fellow mankind, or womankind, humankind, let's put it that way, to serve humankind in the best way possible. So I think that's a wonderful way to serve deity. He goes on to say, well, what about our experiences? And he gives an example of a personal experience, which I find lovely in and of itself. I really do. That he had with Isis. So, at the very end of towards the middle and end of the paragraph, he says, challenging the concept of personal relationship, I do not attempt to discard or deny contact with gods or our experiences. I believe contact with the gods are real and they can reveal themselves to us, but I don't think that constitutes a relationship as we often frame the interactions. While the interactions and experience are personal, as no one else shares those experiences, but it still is not a relationship in my view. So, okay. I get where he's going with this. I do. And I'm willing to follow this train of thought with him. And then he goes on to say, and I'm not going to read a lot of this because it is in Greek. And I don't know a lick of Greek, I'm sorry. But he says they brought this up to the YSEE, which I believe, and if I'm incorrect, I'm sure he's going to comment down in the comments. I believe this is the Hellenistic group that he is involved in New York. If I'm incorrect on that, please, Angelo, do comment below and correct me on that. But I believe that's what it is. this is what they said. They are beings, not persons. We have interactions with them, but that is defined as contact. And then he says, I understand the statement as saying you cannot have a relationship with the gods because they are not people. Relationship occurs between people. Human relationships have limitations, rules, etiquettes, and expectations. These sort of things cannot be expected from a god, thus a relationship cannot be had. And one thing I'll say about the way that we're wording things here, I think that we're focusing too much on the vernacular of a topic rather than the spirit of the topic. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later here. Okay. So we read on in the next paragraph that he compares the sun and our relation to the sun, and compares it to our relationship with deity, that we can relate to the sun, but the sun really doesn't care or relate to us. It just, the sun does its job, and that's it. And we relate to it, but it doesn't necessarily care or relate or do anything besides what it is doing right now of bringing down sunlight and burning and possibly giving me a suntan, you know. So I see where he's going with this. And the one thing that I have to say about this, and I do have some hang-ups with this, we need to have a realization of what a god is versus an instrument or a symbol of a god. And what is the difference between them? And the reason is because you are comparing a celestial body that is physical and doesn't interact beyond its job. The sun's not going to help you win the lottery. It's not going to, get you out of traffic or anything like that. Whereas a divine being would or could do that. The moon is not going to help you ace your next test or make more money at work by getting a promotion. But a divine being could, would, might, can do those types of things. So I think we have to kind of draw a line between what is an instrument or a symbol of God versus what is a God, period. So that's my big gripe and complaint about that. So again, this is not to be a bash on his article. This is to be a philosophical discussion. I really hope people will be commenting below. Comments, because we're getting into some deeply philosophical things here that are rattling around in my brain. And if you guys disagree with me, more power to you. I love it because it's making me think more. Whenever he first asked this question, I literally typed to him, I'm going to have to roll this around my brain thing and get back to you in a little bit because I don't know what I think about this. And then I had to shoot him an answer later. So he goes on to say, what's wrong with thinking of our experiences as personal relationships? I like his question here because I think I can agree with some of this. But of course, debate for debate's sake, of course I'm going to disagree with some of it because otherwise I wouldn't have video content. Come on now. Or he goes on to say, there are some issues with thinking of our interactions as personal relationships. When we do, I think we then privatize what is meant to be shared for the greater whole. One could think of this as divine socialism, where we work for the collective good rather than the personal enrichment. This goes back to the Greek person who I can't say their name, and our task to work with the gods to better society along with ourselves, not just ourselves. To which my response is, do we not better society by bettering ourselves, though? such as whenever I study something, I share what I learned to you guys here on YouTube, in the blog, on Twitter, all of which you can find in the bottom bar. Links everywhere down there. It's like Linkapalooza. So I share these things with you guys whenever I learn something. I'm taking on these studies to better myself, but by doing that, I'm also sharing the knowledge, which helps you guys out. So, in that aspect, this is an honest question of, don't we better society every time we better ourselves? Or, not only that, are we not part of society? So therefore, by bettering ourselves, don't we at very least better a portion of society? A minute little percentage, maybe, just by one person at a time. But if we all better ourselves in one way or another, and then we help one other person, kind of like the paying it forward type deal, 1, 2, 5 other people, we create a chain reaction that then we change society. So by bettering each other, or even just by bettering ourselves, do we not hence better society as a whole? So that's my question, and that's maybe a whole different topic for a different time. I don't know. And he goes on to say in the next paragraph, and I do agree with this. This next paragraph, I really do. And anyway, I'm going to read the paragraph, and then commentary will come after. He says, when we frame our interactions as personal relationships, it also runs the risk of improper relations, such as thinking that we have an in with God, special access to them, or somehow have something that a person who does not have the relationship with the God does not have. Gods are not a friendly bouncer who lets you into the club because you two are homies. I totally agree. This equates to me whenever people say, Jesus told me that this is the way it's supposed to be, and even though he didn't tell anybody else, this is the way it's supposed to be, and you have to do this, and this. And I sit there and I say, hold up. If he told you, he had to have told somebody else. If you two are that close, I'm sure there's somebody else that's close to Jesus in the same way you are, that has a similar message, if not the same exact message. So, I think in that type of aspect, we we can think of ourselves as having an in with a certain deity. And I've seen this sometimes in the pagan community. I've seen it too, where certain people will be like, well, I work with this goddess and you don't work with this goddess, so how would you know what it's like? And I can understand that. But some people seem to think higher of themselves because of the god or goddess that they work with. And it's whatever god or goddess you work with doesn't make it good or bad, it's just different. So I understand what he's saying here. It kind of creates a deity elitism, I have this god and my god could beat up your god type of situation, where people are constantly bickering about whose god is more powerful, which, don't fight, people, you're all pretty. That's what I think he's getting at here, and I really agree with that. We don't have the close personal relationships that we have maybe with a family or a friend or a loved one, or at least I don't, and many people that I know don't have that close personal relationship where you can call them up and just rant about the day. However, I view it more as a working relationship, a work relationship, in the sense of whenever I'm at work, say, my supervisor, I have to call him sir, or it is a sign of respect to call him sir, or call him by his rank, or I can't go up to him and say, hey, Bill, my supervisor's name is not Bill, but I can't go up to him and say, hey, Bill, what's up with this? And, joke around with him like we're homies. We have a working relationship, a professional working relationship. And I think the same, if not even further, needs to go whenever we're talking about deities. Because, yes, we can have the personal relationship of, hey, you know what's going on in my life. You may not have to do the these and thous and thines that the the biblical way of addressing deity, but having reverence and honor and admiration for the sheer power and the willingness of this deity to make itself present in your life, his or her presence in your life, I think is warranted. And if you don't, there are some deities that will smack you upside the head and say, hey, you best be worshiping, doing more worship and less of this jibba jabba, I'm your friend type of thing. Some deities will do that, some will not. I recently got a smack in the face from Sophia whenever, it took me longer than it should have to get her a more prominent or more permanent place in my new house or my new residence. I'm renting a house, so I had to find a new place to put my altar up, at very least an altar to deity. And Sophia, one night I was meditating and she said, hey, dude, you sitting here meditating and doing all this and worshiping me in this way, it's all fine and dandy, but you know what, you gotta have a focal point right now, and I'm gonna need you to get on that shit, and I'm not kidding, I need it soon. She requested that of me, and I knew I needed to fulfill it because it was a personal relationship in a way that she knew that I needed a smack upside the head, and I knew that I wanted to honor her. If we had a personal relationship, I'd be like, oh, no, so Sophia, don't worry about it. I could do that. Possibly even with an accent. But, having that personal relationship, yeah, it could toe the line. It could make a deity more personable. I may not take her as serious whenever she needs me to do something. So I do think it's warranted to kind of keep a little bit of a boundary between where you don't cross that line. And I think I'm going to leave that there. I may do a video on proper etiquette on our parts as followers or dedicants of that deity. So maybe I'll do a video on that, in the future. And we're almost done with this. 2 more paragraphs. Stick with me here. And Angelo continues, when we say I have a personal relationship, it may also be misunderstood as there is something special or unique in you because of that relationship. Experiences are not a sign of uniqueness or elevated status. If you do not have an experience with a certain God, does not mean a God dislikes you. Having an experience does not mean they like you. I treat experiences as sacred and important, but it can happen to anyone. Totally agree. Going back to the sun metaphor, it shines on everyone. But just because you did look up to see the sun does not mean that those who did not don't know the sun or are not connected. You simply put more attention onto the sun than others. I agree with this. And I also want to add on a little bit, though. Little tiny bit that I have wrong with this. Where he says, I have or when people say, I have a personal relationship, it may be misunderstood by others that there is something special or unique, and etc., etc. it does not matter what other people think about your relationship to deity or not. This is also why I clarify or go back and re-clarify or restate something or try to use more exacting words with how I explain things, because things are so often misunderstood, especially whenever we're talking philosophically or in a practice within our own practice or in our own opinions on deity or practice. I constantly go back and clarify what I say because I want it to be clear of what I do and do not practice. In the relationship that I do have or don't have with my deities. That's something that is personal to me, and if other people don't get it, and I've said this in the past, if you don't understand my practice, that's fine. You don't need to, I do. And, it's not something that has to be understood or grasped or have somebody else's head wrapped around it. No. It's my practice. So people misunderstanding it, yes, they can misunderstand it. You're not going to avoid that all the time. But clarifying and explaining it and be willing to explain it further is something that really needs to happen, or questions that need to be asked to people when they're explaining something needs to also happen, because if you don't ask questions, you don't get answers. You don't ask, you don't get. A little underpinning of my life lately. And then he goes into his closing, and I just want to say, Angelo, I love this debate that you've brought into my mind. And I do agree with some points of yours, but I disagree with other points of yours. But I think that your argument is a valid one, a valid question that needs to be asked, especially to everybody that's watching this. You are now asked the same questions. Do you have a relationship with deity, or do you relate to deity? Have you never thought about it, or have you thought about it extensively? Comment, make video responses, all that stuff. I'd love to see your answers, and go and check out the article. And again, links in the bottom bar. And if I didn't say so already, this channel is sponsored by Audible. So yeah, you can go to Audible and get a free book by clicking a link also left down in the nether regions. So go ahead and click on that link, and you can receive a free book. So why wouldn't you do that? That helps support this channel and Christo-Paganism.com. You don't want to continue a subscription? You don't have to. Cancel it. But yes, you get to keep the free book. Awesome. And unfortunately, this book, Tarot, Unlocking the Arcana, by Angelo, is not read on Audible, and I think we need to make that happen. So yeah, maybe I can listen to it on Audible, since I can only get this, via online and at some bookstores, and I really think people should get it because this is a good book. So yeah, I think, Angela, me and you gonna have to talk about how we can get an Audible book done of Tarot, Unlocking the Arcana, available in bookstores and online. And I think I'm going to leave an Amazon link down there too for you guys to go and check that out. And I'm also going to leave a link for Angelo's YouTube channel so you can check that out. And links just all over. The nether regions are the new place of links, the land of links. You can find them all down there. Anyway, rambling. If you are not subscribed, go ahead and click over here on that little subscribe button. I believe I got that corner correct. So, yay me. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and click over there. And I am going to sign off with love, hugs, and ladybugs. Bye-bye. Quick, a kitty picture. Hey. This is Jelly. She's a familiar. And she does not like to be held.